Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. So, tonight I have this gentleman who reached out to me, I'd say probably at least 2 weeks ago. And he's so kind and so polite, and I just knew I had to have him on. So, this is Mr. Stephen Wright. He is running for Congress in the state of Washington in District 5. So thank you so much for joining us, Stephen.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
You talk so highly of me. Make my
What's
freckles
that?
blush. You talk so highly of me, and you're making my freckles blush.
I like nice people. There's not many of them. So actually, one of the interesting things about doing this is, after interviewing over 100 candidates, I've learned that every single state is totally different when it comes to voting and how they vote, when they vote, things like that. Washington state is one of the ones that's like top two, right?
I would say, yeah. I think they're pretty progressive up there. I, I like a lot of things that are going on, but then a lot of other things.
You're
Yeah.
very into agriculture as well, aren't you?
Yeah, that's mostly my major, and my district is mostly agriculture producers.
Okay, so in what regard, what are you most focused on?
Sustainable agriculture. I'm an agrobiologist, so I look at the soil, the plant health, and then how it transfers over to human health.
Okay. So what do you think that, basically your district could do better for those of you who do that?
Well, a lot of Trump's policies are hurting farmers in our district. And I think with the government having certain certain taxes being put on our goods going to China, it's really hurting these soybean producers. And a lot of the payback that the government's giving or bailouts to the farmers are going to the big agricultural producers, while the rest of the producers are being left out.
Right. Have you listened to Bernie Sanders' speeches for Iowa and what your face just lit up?
I like Bernie Sanders.
I have that reaction too. Somebody says Bernie and I'm like,
yeah, I get all
So yeah, he's been coming out with he's always been a supporter of farmers and agriculture, but this year, especially in Iowa, he has a lot of plans. So what are your thoughts on some of the things he's coming out with?
Well, I like his how this passed today, or how the House today passed the $15 an hour minimum wage. I don't know if Mitch McConnell will pass it in the Senate, but it's a great leeway that we're going towards. I think the big monoculture farms that we're seeing, they depend on cheap labor. I think Bernie Sanders introducing that $15 an hour is going to help break up that big agriculture.
Yeah, absolutely. It actually, Pelosi yesterday made a post that said, everyone mark your calendars for tomorrow, and we're going to be voting on $15 an hour by 2024. So she's literally talking about incrementalism. And that vote was today, and it did not pass. So that's too much still for millionaires. So who is, I know you've endorsed Bernie. You're a huge Bernie person, which is obviously kind of a litmus test to get on my show of sorts. But anyway.
I support him regardless. I don't care about the incentive.
Yeah. So I digress, but I just watched, I feel dirty. I have to take a shower, but I just watched CNN because I wanted to watch them pull the people and what night they're going to be on and all this shit. And so I watched it, and Liz is going to go against Bernie this time. And I have trepidation because I feel like he's going to be too nice.
Right.
That worries me because he's just, when it comes to her, he just, even his own family has personally told me he's loyal to a fault. And I'm like, I can see that, because when he puts his arm around her, I really want to just shake him. But so that I'm kind of trepidatious about that. Kamala's with Biden again, which should be really interesting. Yes, I do, Jenna. They're dinosaurs. What's that?
Nice.
My friend just said, "Do you have dinosaurs on your shirt?" I told you this is laid back. Yeah. Okay. So Jeffrey, he's an awesome guy. He's part of our team. He said, "I think minimum wage should be based on the standard of living in the state you live in." What are your thoughts? You agree?
Yeah, I do, because we can see, especially like if I compare Oklahoma to Olympia, Washington, the wages here are pretty stagnant, but we go to Washington and the wages are still about the same, $10 an hour minimum, but we still see the massive inflation pushing against us. So I think in the regions, it does matter where you're at, and that matters on how much money you make to make a living that's decent living that you can provide for your family.
Absolutely. I know here I'm in Pennsylvania and we are at $7.25.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know how you can live on that, especially if you're a mom or a single mom, and that's why people are working like 3 jobs.
Right.
Rob Gravel is not going to be on, unfortunately, because we did reach the monetary goal. However, he didn't get at least 2% in 3 of the polls.
Oh.
So
that's disappointing, but that's another DNC rule. Is that correct?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. The DNC and RNC are evil. They're tools and arms of the oligarchs.
Absolutely. And as far as your area, what do you have trepidation about voting? Do you trust that your votes will be counted?
Yes and no. Primarily, my district has been Republican for the past 20 years, and they've been highly susceptible to the propaganda that Kathy McMorris has put out. And to boot to that, there's a large religious sector that's in that district, and she appeals to that base quite often, and while at the same time demoralizing women's rights. And that seems to be okay with that district as long as they vote Republican, which is just not okay with me.
Right. So now you're running as an independent, which yay.
Yeah.
So why? Most people do run as Dems or Republicans, but I mean, why go independent? Because a lot of people are apprehensive that they cannot win that way.
Well, yeah, I think that's more or less how we've been cultured as a society for the past 30, 40 years. We've seen that it's Democrat versus Republican, and it leaves out the names of the individuals. So in my opinion, that makes accountability almost impossible. So I'm running as an independent because I want to be accountable for myself, not be accountable for a party. And more so, I think I don't want to have the DNC or RNC or another group or corporation determine things that I'm allowed to do. For example, it pisses me off to no end that climate change was not allowed to be a subject, and that is the number one issue in the entire world right now.
Yep, absolutely. And even though people signed petitions and showed up at their offices, still, nope.
Yeah, Sunrise camped out there for days, and the DNC, nothing. It really shows you that the party, the people that are pulling the strings in the parties are more concerned about the money that's being made than the people that it's affecting.
Absolutely. The DNC last year, I want to say it was December, they stated that they would stop taking all fossil fuel money, and then less than a month later, they reneged. So, right. I mean, that's definitely why they don't want to, do it, because someone like Bernie will get on stage and be like, you can't take that. And then everyone will have to copy and, they'll be screwed. So we're hearing a lot of debate about Medicare for all, what it means. Do you cut out the profit of insurance companies? Do you have a pathway? Do you have access? You know, all these technicalities. What exactly specifically do you support?
I support Medicare for all. I support that we should, as citizens, should not be, our government should be taking care of us to the point where they are making sure that we are living healthy lives. I want to say that the Medicare for all, the profits that are made are nothing more than waste, because those profits are not coming or going to the doctors. They're going to the hands of people that are owning the industry. And I see time and time again that this money breaks families, that the bills, the pain medicines. I grew up with two siblings that had terminal illnesses, and I lost them in my teens. And I saw my dad struggle every day to work two jobs and take care of us. My family would come over and take care of my siblings and me so he could go work all the time. And it was just so he can keep medical insurance so he can have his children live as long as he could. And it was that right there was the defining moment in my life when I decided that there's no way that we should be living in this world and be sick. We have the means and availability to make everybody healthy. Why weren't we doing it?
Absolutely. I had a gentleman on from the UK, so we could talk about the differences and what their country has and what we don't. And he said, you know, him and his friends are like huge Bernie supporters because they don't understand how our country has nothing they've always had since like the 40s. Mm-hmm. Other countries they can't comprehend. It's really gross and it's heartbreaking. So what do you think is the number one issue? Do you think it is climate change?
Yeah, I think climate change is going to affect every other issue in that it affects them directly, but also removes our ability to resolve the other issues because the time is running out with climate change. As climate change incrementally kills our world, we're going to have more destabilization, less supplies that are available, and higher amount of money. I am so sorry. My dad has and I'm visiting my dad. Hi, Dad, I'm doing an interview. Thanks. Okay.
My dog has done that so many times, but she's created a following, so
yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems like GoFundMe has become one of the insurance companies in a way. It's pretty gross. And every day we're learning new stories about young people who are dying because they're rationing insulin or they can't get a medication filled. Some of the, you know, like take Elizabeth Warren. Okay, so she comes out with this bill 2 weeks ago that states she wants to put a cap on medications for $500 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, if you spend less than that, which many people do, you get no discounts. So the cap is $6,000 a year, which she thinks is good. So what's your response to that?
I think it's incrementalism. It's terrible. I think to the point where, I don't know about you, but I struggle to make ends meet. I think most Americans do. I think $500 a month is still too much to be paying. I believe the government should be subsidizing, it should be helping us in every way possible to not only control the profits of the pharmaceutical industry, but also ensure that we're healthy.
Absolutely. So some of the things that candidates are saying that they support now, they haven't signed on to in the past, which is kind of, you know, repulsive and people are being duped. What do you think is the one thing that would fundamentally change everything, like politics here on out?
Aliens.
Agree. Field trip.
I think the destruction of the world that's coming from climate change is going to eventually shape politics around it. It was before it was global warming, it was pushed off to the side. Now it's being shown as it's actually happening. There's been supporting evidence in the past, but now it's become more mainstream with the sources that are available. So I think climate change is going to push it to be renewable for the planet.
Absolutely. So, what are your thoughts on money in politics?
Well, I'd say there's a lot of corruption and a lot of lobbying done by wealthy people. And to my what I don't get is what I find that was really corrupt is a wealthy person can send a lobbyist to go lobby for them, while as a poor person has to work day in day out to provide for their family. They can't go to Congress and talk to them. They can't lobby them day out day in. Another thing that really disgusts me is the lobbyists. How I had read that AOC put out that the lobbyists paid homeless people to stand in line for them so they could go talk to the congressman. And just in my mind, that's still just so fucked up because you're strangling the life out of these people and you're going to give them pennies so you can go get a latte while you go while they stand in line for you to talk to the congressman or senate or whatever official. It's just disgusting.
Wow, I didn't even hear about that. That's so. Ugh. So we're already. What's that? Oh, never mind. I thought you said something. I'm just kind of scanning the comments. Now, 2 years. Yes, 2 years ago, Bernie Sanders proposed a cap on big pharma. People like Cory Booker voted against it, things like that. Now, would you be open to something like that? Because it is kind of a separate entity from Medicare for All. While it would, you know, it's it's a separate entity, but do you support a cap or do you support, um, you know, basically just putting a maximum on a month like Warren did, or what's your you know, uh,
I think a
plan
cap
as far as that goes?
I think a cap was just going to be extorted later by other factors that oligarchs or the wealthy and those in the pharmaceutical industry that benefit now and thereafter are going to find a way to work around the system to make some way to where they can benefit more. I think as long as we leave the availability of making profit in the hands of those that would make money off of those of us that are sick, then there's never going to be Medicare for all. There's never going to be an opportunity for all of us to be healthy. We have to take back the power of our health industry and give it back to the people.
Right, absolutely. What about criminal justice reform?
Absolutely. So I see that the war on drugs, in my opinion, has been nothing more but a scheme by the wealthy and other white supremacy type to use it as a means to imprison people of color. I believe then, because of the felonies that follow thereafter, it was used as a mechanism to suppress votes. So I think I think we need to reform the criminal justice system to include decriminalizing marijuana, all fungi, that's all mushrooms, and treat addictions and drug offenses as mental health illnesses rather than as criminal offenses.
Absolutely. So, do you guys have a huge opioid epidemic?
Yes, we do.
That's what I thought. And how is that dealt with now? Are they not treated? They're just sent to prison?
There are rehab programs, but there are also there's large consequences being caught with it still. It doesn't look like we've moved past the point where we're decriminalizing people that are having health problems or people that are having anxiety problems that are just trying to deal with their everyday life. We let these people fall through the cracks, and then we punish them for trying to deal and trying to make amends with what their reality is. They're just trying. They're still people, nevertheless, and we still shouldn't give up on them and put them in a cell. We should help them.
Absolutely. So, what do you propose? Should you win and get into office, what do you propose to actually transition to the point where we can get, more of those programs and keep less people in jail because of it?
Well, the big thing is decriminalizing the elements themselves or the drugs themselves. The second thing would be to get congressional funding for further research and further medical help. But at the same time, that needs to have restrictions so the pharmaceutical industry and those that are making profiting off of people that are sick are not going to be using that availability that we're trying to push on them to make money. Um, I think
Absolutely.
I think the biggest thing is legalizing cannabis. I'm a huge cannabis fan. I went to school and studied it exclusively. I I see the benefits of cannabis, and it really helps those with opiate addictions. It helps a lot of people with anxiety. I think we need to take a second look at how we're dealing with our society and our problems to be able to address a better way to deal with it. And that's not going to happen while we're criminalizing people just trying to get by.
Absolutely. Do you think that people's records should then be retroactive?
Yeah.
Um, and also, if they're in jail right now for cannabis, and then all of a sudden it would become legal, do you think that that should be retroactive as well, and they should get out?
Yes, and I also believe there should be congressional fundings to help rehabilitate these people because they've lost their jobs, they've lost their livelihood, they're going to be put into homelessness immediately. And then that's the circumstance that drug use appears and other things to try to deal with reality. It's not enough to just decriminalize. We need to take care of the people that has negatively affected it.
Absolutely. So, do you support a federal job guarantee?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that it's the biggest problem, not the biggest, but near the biggest problem is we have people that are getting educations and they're going in debt doing it, and then there's no job for them afterwards. There's no job that pays enough to even make the student loan payments and then still have a living wage.
Absolutely. And also I mean, that would help people getting out of jail. They wouldn't have to worry about checking that box. It would help, get rid of homelessness. I mean, it just seems like it would help so much. And even, people like myself, I was laid off for 2 months and I was just going mad applying for things like every
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes of every day. And like, this one paid crap, or this one was too far away, or whatever. And it's just like, it seems like it would just save so many lives by just implementing that. Also, how else are we going to take care of climate change in 11 years if we can't have a federal job guarantee and get this shit cracking, get people, putting up, solar powered things, wind powered things? How can we feasibly do anything in that short amount of time without it?
I think the biggest thing is we stop the increments of carbon that's being added to the atmosphere. And I'm going to go off page or off the. I'm not going to talk about methane. Methane is way more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon, but I'm just going to stick on carbon right now. Carbon's a question. For example, we have been clearing trees to make pasture lands, put our homes on, to put our animals on. And the big thing is trees are able to sequester more carbon than grass. They have more surface area available to absorb carbon versus grass. So the biggest thing about getting our carbon not only stopped from being added to the atmosphere, but going back and declining is first stop the destruction of the sequestering ability. I'm sorry. And the next would be sequester is adding incentives for planting trees. I see a lot of vacant lots that are just decrepit buildings. I see other infrastructure that's not being used that could be used to help assist with dealing with climate change. I think individual owners of houses should also get some sort of subsidy or some sort of assistance to be able to plant on their property things that would help the environment. So I think,
Absolutely. And, for a while, there was a tax credit for if you got solar panels on your roof, and that's going away this year. So, I mean, I don't see that people really, many people continuing to get that. Now, how is your farming out there? I know you said you live kind of paycheck to paycheck. You got a lot of little ones. So,
yeah,
how many kids do you have?
4.
Oh, okay, right.
So
So is it, how is it trying to live on that, that salary? Do farmers in your area actually, do better than, say, living paycheck to paycheck?
some do. It depends if you're a big agricultural producer versus a small one. Right now, our crops are valued at weight and not at the nutrient density or the contents of the crop. So a bigger farmer is able to get more subsidy money from the government because they're able to farm more and therefore get more sold at the same market value because the subsidy makes up for the loss. it makes it really hard for the smaller farms to compete with that. And I think that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal for many farmers. There's some farmers, like I was saying before, that are soybean and corn, they're getting subsidies, while as the other things that we're growing, like strawberries, blueberries, greens, like other things, are not being subsidized. And that kind of also hurts our ability to feed our own people.
Right on. I was actually wondering how long it would take for someone to make a Stephen Wright joke. And it's like 25 minutes in. You get that a lot, don't you?
Yeah, I like him. He's funny.
He is funny. Let's see where to go. It says, if it's a penny for your thoughts and you put in your 2 cents worth, then someone somewhere is making a penny. That's beautiful.
So true.
Thank you, Tom. So, what about, the lack of a better term, the hot topic lately on everyone's mind is immigration. Is your district, are immigrants prevalent in your district?
Yes, they're used a lot on the big agriculture farms, like I was saying before, as cheaper labor. And it's a big impact that they have. They don't have the ability with that wage to make a living wage. So we see a lot of issues with people just not getting enough to feed their families. We also see that there's a lot of people that are against immigrants because they see immigrants needing things. And it's only because they don't earn enough because we don't provide enough while they're working. So I think there's a skepticism that's being brought about with immigration, especially in my district, because they don't make enough money because the farmers aren't paying them enough.
Right. Wow. Yeah. And so do you think that there's also something where your district can incentivize, say, eating healthier and giving some kind of, I mean, it's so hard to get fruits and vegetables sometimes. It's absolutely insane.
I actually want to talk about that. That's something I want to talk about. It's called food deserts. And I think big monoculture farms, big culture farms, are the ones that are responsible for creating food deserts because they concentrate the area of productivity to one area while strangling the little producers in others.
I agree. It pisses me off too.
Let's see. I totally forgot the question. The dog started barking at me.
What I know that this typically food deserts are in people of color's neighborhoods and poor neighborhoods. Do you ever consider, or have you been involved with any kind of program which would end up getting fruits and vegetables to these neighborhoods, or even what could we do as well?
I was thinking that we could provide incentives for agroboots, availability for structures or land that's not being used that could be incentivized by the local population and paid for through congressional funding to provide planting foods or materials to bake gardens so that it can be distributed to the residents. I think there's congressional funding for it. We could see a lot more emergence of the small farming versus the big farming. Because right now there's no real big incentive for small farmers. There's huge incentive for big farmers. And that goes along with more strangling the economy around that locally to have the big producers be able to make that money and strangle out the smaller ones. I think in our areas where we have a lot of food issues, I think putting a lot of agro-hoods in, as in giving people the ability to grow their own food or grow a plot of food in an area where there's a decrepit building or open land, will really help the community come together and help feed the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to scan the comments. Oh, Andy. Okay, that's the one I know. Andy, he's a teammate. He said, I put spot remover on my dog. Now he's gone. That's the one I always think of. People sharing their healthcare stories and lack thereof. when you speak to people who, in your district who are going to be voting, what is, the number one thing you hear?
Well, it depends who I'm talking to, really. There is a very, very large concentration of Republicans. A lot of them are following along the MAGA lines. And a lot of it has to do with just discriminating against people for just obvious misconceptions of the reality that's presented to them. I think we see a lot of discrimination that comes towards immigrants, towards the poor, towards people of color. And I think a lot of it has some basis to something else, and it's just being correlated and sped out as propaganda by the people that they follow. So I noticed that Republicans, I'm not saying all Republicans, but what has been endorsed by the party seems to be white nationalism and screw everybody else.
Yeah, right on. So do you guys have an open primary?
Yes.
Okay, so that's definitely good. When is your election?
2020?
But do you know the date yet?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
I believe it's November 4th, but I'll have to check on my.
Oh, yeah, you're independent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have to go
through
the process.
Right. So you get to go to
the other reason for me. The other reason for me running as independent is there's no way for the DNC to do what they did to Bernie, essentially give the nomination to somebody else, which is just, I don't want to cuss, so I'm going to go on.
I was at the protest at the convention. Yeah. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to be going to this convention as well to be. Nice. Yeah, I mean, like, I know they're going to fuck us over some way, so I'm just prepared to go, period.
Yeah, they're already sowing the seeds with the misleading polls and misleading information that comes from the popular mainstream, just like they did before. But I don't know, I see a lot of similarities between now and then that it's shaking me.
Absolutely. They haven't learned anything at all. And, it's kind of... in a way, it feels kind of fruitless to take them on again because it didn't really work last time. But at the same time, I'm like, I can't just sit here. Like, this is our last chance. Like, if we don't get a real progressive, as in Bernie, we are fucked. Like, we are.
There's no one else that's willing to tackle the issues that needs to be tackled with climate change, criminal justice reform. Just everything that his platform is about is the things that we need to work on. And I see the other ones that are trying to be like, I am a progressive too, but then they don't go the distance like Bernie does. That's not progressive. That's incrementalism.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to, look at receipts and things like that, because my biggest thing that I tell people is you had a chance in 2016 to stand by someone who is, who brought these things and made them household terms to America. You had a chance to stand with him, and you're propping all these things up now, but instead you chose to stand with someone who called them all ponies and pie in the sky. So where did the epiphany happen? What changed your mind? But people don't ask them that. They're just like, oh, cool, they believe the same thing. Yeah, they really don't. Like, at all.
I think a lot of that has to do with all of us struggling that are just trying to make ends meet right now with working all the time. Some of us 2 jobs, and we just honestly don't have the mental capacity or time at that time because we're so tired to look through all the news and to validate sources. We become familiar with sources and we just take their word for it without researching. It's just common among humans. And
that's a really valid point. Absolutely. Barbara wishes she was a dog. I am right there with you. Participation is absolutely imperative. I always say democracy is not a spectator sport. Let's see. More people sharing about their medical issues. It's so sad. I swear, it's like almost everyone we know is, going through something like that. And, it seems like big money in politics and Medicare for all and climate change, like those three are just like, what else is going on, in the current news that you feel candidates should be forced to address?
Well, I think a lot of the interference that's coming from other countries may also be a big topic, because we only just scratched the surface with what the Russian probe had revealed with Mueller. And then we see other countries such as Israel with AIPAC, and then Saudi Arabia with their contributions. And we see a lot of other interference that's coming, and that money is going to go towards propaganda that's going to then influence us, because we're all working too much to be able to do research the sources. So the money is going to play in a big way when we see the things on the screen, because a lot of it's going to be familiar to us, and we're just going to take it at its word. So I think a lot of interference with other countries is another big thing, and I see that some of the states started doing paper ballots, but there's still quite a few that are still electronic. And a lot of them are still having machines that were bought outside the U.S. from around the same areas and same companies that are related to the original hackings that happened in 2016 and 2018.
Do you support ranked choice voting?
Yes.
Whoa, your screen just went bananas again.
Uh-oh.
Can you X out and log right back in?
Sure thing. Sorry. Be right back.
Sorry, guys. Did you see that, or am I tripping? Because that shit was weird. I mean, I know I'm visually impaired, but that looked really odd. Give me more comments, guys. What else do you want me to ask? Let me see. Let me look at my trusty okay. So there you are. One of the other things we could discuss is housing. I know most of the candidates I interview that's one of their top concerns. So what is it like, in your district? Is housing affordable?
Yes and no. It depends if you want to go rural or not. But we see in like areas in Spokane, there's high concentrations of homelessness and also high amounts of rent that's due. So yeah, there's a lot of homelessness, but it also has to do with the ability for those local populace to keep up with the bills. And again, that going back to the minimum wage based on where you're at could really help with that.
Right. Is your district, like, how does your state deal with homelessness? Do they like put the bars on the benches and like arrest people and stuff?
They put the bars on the benches, on the bus stop benches, so you can't lay down. So I see that quite a bit. There are some homeless projects that have gone through in Washington. There's, for example, the city of Olympia had a homeless encampment that was right beside the bus station. We saw that were people that were getting help there, but we also saw some other things that was happening. And it's because the local economies were still struggling. The homeless were given a place, but they weren't given resources. And what that happened is, for example, I used to go to the food bank whenever I was in school. I couldn't afford to feed my family while also going to school. So I would go to the food bank. And one of the things I noticed is a lot of the homeless people would start intimidating people in the food lines. And I know these people, like any person, is going to react differently if you're well fed versus starving. And I don't blame the people that were making people uncomfortable and trying to get people out of a food line so they can get more food. It's just I blame the local resources of the government being used.
Wow, that's heartbreaking. So I'm just scanning the comments. What's that?
Oh no, I was just saying, yeah. I was agreeing.
Oh. So what about, what's that?
Oh, still a little nervous. Go on.
um, what about, I know one of the things, especially with Eric Garner's, what happened 2 days ago with him, just, yet again, another unarmed black man dying, getting absolutely no justice, if you could call it that.
Mhm.
Just 2 days ago again. What kind of things do you have planned should you be elected for African Americans and what they deal with the police?
Well, I would like to first say that we need to have accountability for the officers. That means we need to have mandatory body cams, but I also think we need to expand in that we need cams for the police cars as well to include 360 views. The other thing is make sure your audio recordings, and I think harsh punitive or penalties should be applied to the officers that unplug their cameras or their camera malfunctions, or they have several, if not just one, account of abuse happening. We need more accountability for the officers that are committing these offenses. Right now, we have officers that they can get away with anything, and they have with me too. I've gotten the crap kicked out of me by cops before, and they just brushed it off. So I understand that we need to have accountability for these officers, and I think their accountability and their punishment from doing their crime should be extremely more than the citizens that they try to police.
Absolutely.
I'd like to say that those cops that got off with that should have been charged with murder.
Absolutely. And this is just, it's not like it's an isolated incident. It keeps fucking happening. It's so upsetting. Even, and we're white. So I can't even fathom, people of color having to accept that this shit keeps happening.
Right.
Tom, yeah, you're absolutely right. Training and in de-escalation. Also, they should be trained in mental health. Interactions. Like a lot of time, people are just having psychotic breaks, and they don't know how to deal with that. Trainings, like sometimes they do like a 2-hour training when they're hired and then never again. So yeah, I think there definitely needs to be more consistency and more follow through. That's for sure.
I'd like to see the officers not be given the ability to kill people, period. I think we should remove their firearms and replace them with non-lethal methods of containment.
And what would happen then if they were approached with someone with a gun?
Well, that's just the thing. If they have the protections available to them, there are new technologies that are coming out, especially with graphene and other materials that are still catching up to the police department. I see there's a sharp rise in buying munitions and lethal weapons, but less of a rise in buying protective armors and other methods to de-escalate and protect. I see the military or the cops becoming more of the military day in, day out, with less concern for the citizens they police.
Right. Yeah, you guys, I know, I wasn't hallucinating. Your screen just did it again, and people were like, whoa.
Oh, it did it again?
It's okay.
Okay.
You're so sweet. It's okay. Like, seriously, it's okay. Like, I have had, my viewers are the best because they've stuck with me, even though I've had the worst, electronic problems, like, in the history of. Let me see. Yeah, Cheryl, you're 100% correct. Quality of training should be checked by people who have had experience being arrested and abused. That's a great idea. That's really, really good. What do you think about that, Stephen?
I'd like to have a panel of people that have been convicted and gone through the hardships of the criminal justice system to be the ones that reform it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is something that we didn't speak about tonight that you'd like to address?
Let's see here. Well, we went off talking about climate change, and I feel like that's my number one issue. And we talked about carbon sequestration abilities, but we didn't talk about carbon input. So we see a lot of the energy being produced now, especially like coal fire plants and oil fire, producing a lot of the carbon output that we see today, along with combustible engines. I think the transitioning to renewables should be subsidized by the government and helped towards those, not of the ones that are making large amounts of money, but at the people that have no money, at the people that have no credit, at the people that are broke, at the people that have no jobs. Those people need to be brought up with us at the same time, while at the same time limiting those that already have more than enough resources. And I think once we start getting to that stage, we can be able to change and transition our entire economy to where everybody benefits equally while also creating a sustainable planet.
Absolutely. If I don't, Andy, I don't get that one. I don't. I'm gonna be 100% honest. The show is just, you're killing me, Andy. Okay, I once bought dehydrated water, but I didn't know what to add. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Maybe so.
Okay, I think I do get it.
Yeah.
I get it now.
Yeah, take a puff, you'll get it.
Oh my God. Oh, thanks, Andy. So what is something you want to, we got Cheryl said she'd vote for you if you were in Vermont.
Thanks, Cheryl.
What is something you want to leave with the viewers, so that hopefully they share your info with people who live in Washington, or absolutely follow you on Twitter, things like that? What's something you want to share?
I think I want to share that climate change is going to affect all of us, but I think most importantly, it's going to affect the people that can't do anything about it. Our children and our grandchildren are all going to suffer the consequences of our inaction today. I think that's the most important thing, is our children need to be taken care of, and they won't be if we don't address climate change.
Right on. And what do you want to tell the people who are understandably feeling completely defeated in these times?
There's hope. We're going to change this world, and we're going to change it with you in it, and you're going to benefit just as much. We're going to bring everybody up with us. There's no reason to leave anybody behind.
Right on. So do you want to give your information, like your website and Twitter and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, my website is Wright Congress, WRIGHT Congress.com. My Twitter handle actually got banned the other day, so I'm going to work on getting another Twitter. And yeah.
I don't even know what you did. You don't post anything offensive at all.
I don't know. But
unless
right now,
something cool.
Yeah, I just pissed off the wrong bots, I think.
Well, thank you so much. Oh, there's his face! Yay!
Oh, you got it back. Cool.
I was like, is this a candidate or is this some kind of Matrix shit? So thank you so much for joining us. You're amazing. I knew I'd love you because you're just very sincere, and our talks on Twitter were awesome. So thank you again for joining us. You guys definitely give him a shout out to any of your friends in Washington. Also Tuesday, I'm having Congressman Ro Khanna back for the 4th time. I know he's a favorite. So, and this is the first time I've had him back since he became co-chair of Bernie. So that'll be quite interesting. We have a lot to talk about.
Look forward to watching it.
What's that?
Oh, I look forward to watching it.
Awesome. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, I love you guys. You're amazing. And once more, thank you so much, Stephen. And I wish you the absolute best of luck.
Thank you so much. Rock on.
Absolutely. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.